Welcome back to Rad Dads, a podcast where I, Micah Sherman, interview some of the coolest dads I know who have a big heart for their families and an even bigger love for Jesus. Today's episode, I am interviewing a dad who is and has raised a son and daughter through high school with his wife. He is also both a coach and a teacher. Our verse of the episode is brought to you by Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Grab your coffee and let's get started. Hey, welcome back to Rad Dads. This is your host, Micah Sherman. This is the 11th episode, 11th interview, and second to last of the first season. So I just want to say thank you so much for all of you guys who have been tuning in and have been a part of this journey. I hope it's been encouraging. I've gotten to talk to some of you guys and have said that it has been. So that's the goal, that you'd feel equipped, sharpened, encouraged as a dad or a mom or anybody else. So just wanted to say thanks again to everybody that's been tuning in. Our interviewee today, our rad dad of episode 11, is a high school dad, great friend of mine. Third interview in Santa Barbara. I've gotten to interview 3 dads out there. Again, we lived out there for a bit. And he is a teacher, a coach, and a dad. And again, just a good friend of mine that I've gotten to observe and learn from and do some life with. So here we go. Let's get into it. Chris Hughes, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Super fun. Good to see you.
Thanks for being available. So I do, Chris, is I give this scouting report. I get to introduce you, brag about you a little bit, and then we'll get into the interview.
Perfect.
So Chris is a junior high PE teacher, and you've been doing that for how many years?
25.
25 years. That's awesome. Also a volleyball coach, husband and dad in Goleta, California. And got to, like I mentioned, I was able to be a teacher alongside with him and a peer at his school. Got to observe him, and awesome teacher, awesome man of the Lord. And just notice, Chris, you're a type of teacher that every kid wants.
And you could just tell that the students in your class loved being there. You have this great energy and enthusiasm that is just so infectious that you could tell just wore off on your students. And more importantly, what I observed was your students seemed to just know that you cared about them more than just as a student, more than just on campus, but outside of school too, with their families and lives outside. And that's a big deal. And they could see that it wasn't just about PE. It was that you loved them. You loved them as a person. And then for myself as a teacher, I was a new teacher coming into Goleta Valley Junior High, and you were just so welcoming and kind.
Just some things I observed and thought, man, Chris would be a great person to interview. And I know you have some kids, so I'll let you introduce kind of your family and kind of maybe where you're at stage-wise of parenting, and then we'll keep going.
Well, thank you for that intro. Yeah, it means a lot. And as a teacher, especially as a PE teacher, one of the things that I've always tried to do is we have the ability as PE teachers to teach life. I think all teachers could teach life in a different way, but as a PE teacher, I could teach a little bit more. And the longer I teach, it's all about relationships, and kids are fun. They're little kids in big bodies is what we say. And they're just fun. So if you get at their level and just, let them know that you're standing next to them. You're not behind them, because some of them want to say that or believe that they're ahead of you, but you're also not ahead of them. Teachers, you think that, hey, I know what's right, and I'm going to tell you everything that's right, and you just got to do it. I say that's not a great way to teach. I think you need to be next to them and walk them through stages of life. And so that's one of the things I try to model, is to walk next to kids and meet them where they're at. My wife is an educator at Westmont College, and she's been a teacher for a long time. And she said something to me interesting years ago. She said, we need to find out what's in the kids' backpacks. So what do they bring to school, from their family, from their life, from their past? Maybe, mom's a drug addict, maybe dad's in jail, maybe brother's in a gang, and maybe everything else. I've had all those, and I've had kids that sleep in cars every day. So if you know where they're at, and you meet them where they're at, you establish that relationship. That's good teaching, and that's fun. And that's one of, I think, Christ's calling for me.
Yeah.
So,
and I can tell, like, you seem like you're having fun out there, which not every teacher's having fun, and you can read it on their face. And so I always felt myself drawn to like checking in with you, Chris, how's it going? And anytime we got to collaborate on anything was a lot of fun.
Super, super fun. So, I have a wife, Michelle Hughes. We both went to Westmount College, and our goal was to stay in Santa Barbara, like a lot of people's goal.
Mm-hmm.
And so she became a teacher, English teacher, and then she went as a vice principal at a high school, Dos Pueblos High School, for many years. And then she finally graduated from high school, and now she replaced her education professors at Westmont.
Wow.
And so she teaches future teachers, to be teachers. So she's a doctor, and is just great. We have 2 kids, Haley Hughes and Grant. Haley graduated from Boise State this past year, and it's fabulous. And she now has a big job in Newport Beach, kind of close to you, Micah. And she works for Elite Productions. It's I guess it's an event planning company, and she does really, really well. Super, super proud of her. And then Grant Hughes, our son, is a senior at Dos Pueblos, involved in lots of stuff, especially sports. And we are navigating college, trying to figure out where to go for him.
Yeah. It's crazy because we left Santa Barbara 4 years ago, and he was just about to start high school, and now he's about to finish. Like, time flies so fast.
So fast. Yeah. And as a parent, you don't want to miss anything, because you said it, time flies fast, and I can't believe we are just a couple of months away from being empty nesters.
Right? Yeah, I just got an interview an empty nester, so if you need some advice, you can tune into that episode.
You can do that.
So first question: what would you say, Chris, has been your favorite stage of parenting so far?
Yeah, way to start off with a loaded question.
Mm-hmm.
The thing first thing came to my mind is my least favorite stage.
That's okay. You could share that too.
So that was probably when the kids were really little. And the main reason why, they didn't really want me, they wanted mom. Bottom line, it's all about the feeding. It's all about mom. So I was just working. I was changing a lot of diapers and bathing, things like that, but they wanted mom. So
unconditional love.
Unconditional love. And in that stage, I really like to sleep. I enjoy my sleep.
Yeah.
Well, as you have the little ones, you don't
Turns
sleep
out.
much. And you and I talked about that a lot.
Yep.
And so that's probably my least favorite stage. Every stage has a total blessing. I remember coming home and Michelle just giving me the kids, one at a time, and I would go for walks in the baby Bajorn, and I love that. And giving her a break and looking at flowers and just walking around the neighborhood and having your son or your daughter on your chest as you walk that's an awesome feeling.
Yeah.
And then staring at them when they're little and realizing that they really can't live without you.
Yeah.
And also realizing that God had a huge part of this. I mean, they're a miracle. Kids are an absolute miracle.
Right.
And if you experience birth, I was lucky to be in there. It's a miracle. Right. It is just a flat out miracle of God.
That's awesome. That's
so
awesome.
Every stage is great.
Right. Yeah. I like that you said everyone has its blessing. It's got its challenges too, but definitely its blessings. Do you remember, Chris, when they finally kind of started like, oh, Dad, hi, Dad.
Yeah.
Started noticing you?
Pretty much a little bit after when they were starting to walk. Like, you'd come home, and it was so fun to come home from teaching in a weird way, because you're an absolute rock star when you come home, because the playman's home, Dad's home, and let's go. And I love that stage, just to be the rock star. And
you mean your kids at school don't see you as a rock star?
not like your own kids.
Yeah,
they do sometimes, until I make them run and work hard and have this thing called effort. But yeah, pretty fun when your kids recognize you and that you're part of the family, and they look up to you from the day one. And so I think one of my messages to you, Micah, and everybody else is you're an example. Yeah. Number one, they're looking to you. You lay the foundation of everything, especially as a male.
For sure. Oh. That's good. Next, what What have been some values, traditions, as you've gleaned from either your dad or other father figures in your life that you've kind of tried to continue with your family? It could be more like characteristics, values, or like traditions, even if it was a trip or certain things that you have continued or started new with your family.
Good. First thing coming to mind is family. Is my wife's family is very close. My family was very close, and just spending time as a family. I grew up where we had dinner at 5:30 every day of my life.
Wow. Okay. On the dot.
On the dot. And I could just remember that. And maybe in high school stuff, it wasn't the best thing, but man, looking back, it was great just to be a family. Michelle's family, my wife's family, they do it right too. They celebrate hard. And I love that as a family and love each other no matter what. And so we've always vacationed together. We've always included people and included all the family together and made special time together. The things that we've always done, if it's Christmas and Easter, but also just family trips, if it's a Hawaii trip or a Mammoth trip, just being together as family is huge. And knowing that you have support through the generations, I think.
Right,
so I've been looking back, I've been totally blessed with a great family and a great, when you marry somebody, you marry their family.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in that. That's what my pastor said to me when I wanted to get married. And it's so true. And so I married Michelle's family, and they've been a huge blessing. So it's all good. So my memories and traditions, it's basically family time, being together, and the importance of extra time being together as a family. Super, super important.
Cool. Yeah. Anything from other fathers or your dad or even mom that you feel like, oh man, they did this really well, I want to continue that? And it could be also family.
Yeah.
Anything that comes to your mind?
Well, just as a coach, my dad coached me, and so I've coached my son and and my daughter, and that's been a huge blessing. And them just being there. I think you could always work, but you can't always be a dad of a high schooler because they're going to graduate, or elementary school. So I think we're called to be there. And I've been blessed as a teacher to be able to be there and be present. And the kids I teach, some of the kids that struggle, they have broken families, or the parents aren't there, or unfortunately the parents have to work 2 jobs, and they don't go home to anybody. So I feel blessed in that. And that's a little bit of my role as a male teacher at a junior high, I think, is to be, kind of a father figure, but just kind of a stable figure in people's lives and of support. So I think tradition wise, it's just, I want to be there for my kids.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. You, if a lot of my conversations with other dads that has been around that idea of being present. And so whatever they're going through, being present and involved has seemed like a very something that's been an impression of other people that have made on them that they want to continue with their kids. So it's interesting to see how being present and involved is so important. And then you also mentioned the table, and I've heard that a lot recently too. I read a quote on a restaurant wall. It was Ronald Reagan or something that said the most important conversations start at the dinner table. And I think that's so true, because that's when you're finally locking eyes with your family, where the rest of the day is, a bee buzzing around the hive.
Yep. And we've made a point of that, of spending together time at the table and asking each other, how's your day? What do you got going tomorrow? What's going on? And trying to shut off the world. The other thing my wife and I did for our marriage, and it was a blessing, is that when the kids were little, when I got home from work or she got home from work, when we were together for the first time, we would sit down together, have a glass of wine or watch the news, but just be together. And it was like our time as a married couple together, without the kids just knew not to really bother us for like a half an hour.
Yeah.
But that was super important time for our marriage. When the kids were little, we had to get a babysitter, but it was worth it. Every Monday night we got a babysitter.
Awesome.
For maybe half an hour to an hour, and we had a date night Monday night. Not a lot goes on Monday night, and we would go for a walk. We might go for a quick bite to eat. we just wanted to spend time together every Monday
Right.
night. But looking back, that was a great tradition just to keep our marriage really strong.
Right.
And when you have kids, it's
The
tag
focus is on the
team and
kids.
it's a lot. But I think keeping a marriage, your kids are watching your marriage, and that's super important. And so when they see you love your spouse, you're doing God's work. I think that's super, super important to do.
Yeah, that's good. That's convicting for me. We need to get in a regular date night. That's something that we could definitely do better.
Super important.
And that we're always saying it, but you just gotta make it happen and find that babysitter and start that up. So whether you knew it or not, the episode title of this episode is called High School Dad.
Oh, perfect.
So you were my high school dad of Rad Dads. I don't even know if you knew the podcast is called Rad Dads.
I did not know.
That doesn't really matter. That's the small details. So going off of that, we mentioned, your son is about to graduate high school. You've also had your daughter all go through high school. And so could you kind of give us a glimpse of how has those high school years been? What does it kind of look like, the highs and lows? Kind of paint us a picture. For us new parents.
It's big. I think it's really, really important years in life, and you need to be there, but it's also really hard parenting. And I think mainly because we talk about a leash. And so how long is your leash for your kids? I read a great book recently called The Fear of Failure, and it's okay for kids to fail, especially when they're younger. We don't want to fail when they're older, but when they're younger, they can learn a lot of lessons on that.
Totally.
So being a high school parent, I think our kids failed a little bit, but they also had a lot of successes. And we wanted to know, I told this to a friend last night, actually. I said, a pastor friend, I said, hey, I just want my kids to know no matter what, we love them. No matter what happens, we love you.
Right. And
so I think it's super important that you stand behind your kids. But Haley had a great journey. She was a cheerleader in an engineering department at Dos Pueblos. I think my wife, as a female, related to her a little bit more. I was the dad and maybe the example with, boyfriends and with male relationships. But she spent more time with Haley than I did, in a weird way, like the quiet time, the talk time.
Sure.
And then I was kind of the opposite with Grant as a male, and then as a sports guy and as a coach. But they're really hard years. And how long is your leash with your kids? And my wife's leash it's different. It was different for each kid. It was different for each situation. But I think our prayer and our thought a lot of the time was, we are laying the foundation for their future. And that was our prayer. And that if you lay a really good foundation, they will make the right choice. And so that was our hope, was to always lay the foundation and give them the choice. And then you pray for the right choice. And then you really, I think in the high school years for me, it was, Grant's out on Friday night, or Haley is, and who is she with, and what are they doing?
That's scary to me as a parent of 3 to 4 year olds. Like, man, we can't imagine that.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then it's, laying a good foundation, but also, you've heard me say this, Micah, is you need to know, your kids' friends, and you need to keep them busy.
Yeah.
Know your kids' friends and keep them busy. But our kids have blessingly made some really good choices. So it makes us happy. And they've steered away from some friends and steered towards other friends.
Yeah.
So knowing those friends and knowing their parents and stuff is super important.
Right.
But
again, being involved, right?
High school dads are, it's a lot.
Right.
And then, for me, is how involved do I want to be? Because I'm lucky in that I know all his friends. I know all their friends because I taught them all. So I think for a lot of parents, they don't know that, they don't know as much as I did, but I feel blessed in that. But also I wanted to give them space.
Sure.
So it was a little bit of a fine line to walk.
Yeah. What did you, in that season and this season you're in right now, what have you most enjoyed? I can imagine it's been hard too, but what have kind of been some of the high points for Haley and Grant in high school?
Such a great question. I'm just so proud of them. Haley was, a cheerleader in the engineering department, got good grades, just made really good decisions with friends, with educational stuff. She was just a joy. And I think one of the biggest praises my wife and I got was when other people would say, your daughter, she's so great. She's so nice. She talked to this girl, or she went and played with that guy,
Right.
or she just is so fun to be around. She could talk to adults. So when you hear praises about your kids from other people or from random people, that was huge for us. We just absolutely love that. And we got that both from Grant and from Haley. The people that met them, they just really enjoyed being with them. And that makes us super proud.
Awesome. So you spoke a little bit, Chris, about, having a daughter go through high school and then having a son. How I'm sure those were very different. You mentioned like your wife did a little bit more of like kind of the one-on-ones talking with Haley, and I'm sure you did that with your son. Any other things that were kind of like the big differences for, I have a daughter, and I had a son. So I'm curious what have been the biggest differences there.
They're different. There's no doubt about that. I think Haley just opened up a lot more to Michelle. And I had a hard time, and it's a big word, hard time, but just relating to some of Haley's things that were very important to her. They weren't important to me as a male or as a dad. Sure. But that doesn't mean I don't listen. That doesn't mean I don't have empathy. Right. But I think deep down I struggled with that a little bit. And it's maybe the opposite for my wife. My son might have some sports things that goes on that I could definitely relate to, and that maybe she doesn't as much. So I think being the dad of a daughter, to me, the main thing is being an example of a male figure in their life. And I think I went to a wedding. One of my students a couple years ago, she got married, and her dad stood up, who's a friend of mine, and said something at the wedding. And I started this is probably 10, 15 years ago. I started doing this, and I thought I should be doing this every day. And your listeners will like this. He stood up at the wedding and said, I don't want to get emotional. His daughter got married. He says, I've been praying every day for her spouse. How cool is that?
That's awesome.
I've been praying for your spouse since you've been in third grade. And I thought, I need to start doing that.
Yeah.
I need to pray for Haley's spouse and for Grant's spouse, that they would know God, and that they would have a relationship, and that it would be a blessing and a good thing. Right. And I thought I could do that, and so I've been doing that, and I think God will honor that. And I think Haley, for me, that's something I could do, and that I think she's going to marry somebody maybe like her dad.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's a good thing.
Right.
Hopefully I've been a good example.
I think it will be a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anytime we're at a wedding, my wife will say, like, someday, Mike, and I say, stop.
Yeah.
Don't even mention it. All right. I don't even want to get there.
I'm going to be
my little girl.
I'm going to be crying.
It's my little girl. I don't want to even think about it yet. But man, especially as a dad and a daughter, gosh.
It's special. I mean, your relationship with your daughter, you're everything. And I feel that. And I feel some weight on that. It's a lot, that's a lot of weight. And I'm, like everybody else, I'm a sinner and I have issues, but also I want to be there for her no matter what. I mean, I would drop anything to support Haley in whatever she needs. So it's an important role. There's no doubt about that.
Even having an opportunity to move back into your house.
Yeah. she could
temporarily. Let's underline right there.
The leash never goes away, but it's nice and long now, which is good. But we're definitely there for the phone call, or if she needs anything.
Cool. Nice. All right, moving on. So we know that you are a coach. You've been coaching Grant for a little bit too. Volleyball, which speaks to my heart as a volleyball player as well. How has it been coaching your son? You mentioned your dad coached you too. So how's that been coaching your son? And now probably this is your last season coaching him.
It is.
Finally, it's coming to a close.
It's a good story. I volleyball is a passion of mine, just like you, Micah, and played in college and loved it and just wanted to give back to something that's been good to me. And I think God in Christ can teach you a ton of stuff through sports.
Amen.
And he did.
Yeah.
He did for me. And he taught me an unbelievable amount. And I just wanted to pass that on to kids. So I've always coached. But here's a good story. When Grant was in 5th grade, I took him to elementary school and I was dropping him off. And he got out of the car and he looked back at me and he said, "Hey, Dad, when are you going to coach my team?" Mm-hmm. So I sat in the car and cried for a while. For 20 years, I've been coaching other people's kids. Mm. And then when your own kid says, "What about me?" It hurts. That was a good one.
How old was he?
He was in 5th grade.
Okay.
And so I quit that year. So I quit being the head coach and started coaching AOSO and his basketball team and all those other things and loved it. And then when Grant got into 8th grade, between his 8th grade year and freshman year in high school, I remember being at the house and just randomly Grant said, "Hey, Dad, do you want to go pepper?" I was out the door so fast with
right?
volleyball.
You've been coaching him in other sports, but now we're volleyball. I fully support you.
Yeah, that's my passion. That was it. And I was out of there. And so then we got into high school and he got into high school and he said, "Hey, Dad, I would like you to coach again. You know more than a lot of people and you have the history and the wisdom." He goes, "I'd love you to coach." So absolutely. So I got back into coaching. I did not need to be the head coach again. I've been there, done that. I'd rather be a mentor of that.
Sure.
So I was one of the assistant coaches and also, JV coach for a while, but it's been really a blessing to me and hopefully a blessing to him. And the nice thing is Grant's really good at volleyball. So it's not one of those I'm favoring him per se. And his teammates love him and they love his ability to play and his passion to play. And I think that passion comes from me a little bit too, and his tenacity, but it's been really fun. But also one of the harder parts is we try to keep volleyball at school. So when I come home, I'm dad.
Yeah.
When I'm at school, I'm a coach, but also if the rubber met the road kind of thing, I'm dad.
Right.
I want to be dad. I want to be a volleyball coach.
Yeah. Amen.
So it's been great for me. I mean, maybe ask him that question. Maybe it's not as great, but for me, it's about volleyball too. And it's about relationships and about all the kids, not just my son. And then there's another dad who coaches too, Dave Goss. He was an All-American at Stanford and he's a pastor in town. And It's been great to have him as an assistant coach too. And just, examples to young men of being an athlete, but also being a Christ lover and being a teacher and being a coach. It's been good for those kids too, I think.
Yeah. I'm curious because my dad coached me as well. And I'm curious if you ever did this. Maybe this is just a John Sherman thing. But he typically on the first practice, sometimes I did nothing wrong. Sometimes I might have said a word or something out of turn. But it took one thing and he'd say, "Micah or Sherman, go take a lap." And he did that on the first practice. And it was always, and he typically would let me know ahead of time, but to set the tone of like, even coach's son doesn't get a pass. Did you ever do anything like that with Grant?
Absolutely. Yeah. And with everybody else in a weird way, when I remember distinctly, there were some plays that happened in games and matches that I just screamed like, "That's your ball."
Right.
And then I realized that was Grant. It was Grant that should have had that ball.
Oh, gotcha.
But it was just about volleyball,
right.
And so I didn't, it was one of those and he's pretty hard on himself. So I'm pretty lucky in that way, but he doesn't get a pass. It's right. It's about the game of volleyball, but also he's pretty humble. And even we played last night and he's like, we were winning and he's like, "Dad, pull me out. Let somebody else play."
Sure.
So that's another proud moment totally, as a dad when your kid does stuff like that. And it's like, let somebody else play. It's pretty good.
That's awesome. Yeah. There's not much, I feel like, compared to coaching that you can really see, like the Lord sanding edges and shaping. Like sports are just so good for that. And your character, your work ethic and everything. And to be able to be involved in a coach in that process sounds just like a privilege.
Huge privilege. Everybody should coach.
Yeah.
Everybody should coach. And I'm proud as a teacher, like when kids say, "Hey, what should we call you?" That's number one. I said, just call me coach.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's a good thing. Coaches challenge people, but they also are behind people and they
Mm-hmm.
encourage people, and
Sure.
their expectations are high. And I think it's just a great term, coach.
Totally. Moving on a little bit different direction. For your and your wife's kind of parenting style, do you guys feel like it's kind of really just been you guys as far as the parenting your kids, or do you feel like you've had kind of a network of support and also other people pouring into Grant and Haley's life?
Yes,
Both.
both. I think the other people is huge. I think I've encouraged you to. We've always had our friends carry our kids, be with our kids, be with our friends and their families too. We always wanted our kids to be able to communicate with adults and other people. So we've been very open with other people being involved in our kids' lives. And so they've had a huge influence. And some of them have been mentors for our kids, and some of them have, listened to our kids and asked them questions and stood by them through hard times and easy times. So I think it's super important. So it's not just us, it's everybody that helps parent your kids. And I think you need to, we opened the door to that and we wanted that. And we have really good friends, which helps a lot.
Right. Yeah.
When it gets to it though, yeah, we're there, and we're gonna discipline, or we're gonna praise, and everything else in between.
Sure.
Our kids, but it takes a village.
Yeah,
sure.
I know that's what I wrote down. It takes a village to raise your kids.
Yep.
And has that been like friends, like your family? Has it been just friends growing up here in Santa Barbara, or your church? What is
everybody?
Yeah,
everybody. I think a big one, like Michelle's dad he's the real deal and an influencer, and he's had some pretty high-powered jobs, and he's just a great man. And so our kids, we've encouraged them both to invest in him and vice versa. He just does it naturally, but we're like, he only has, so much time on this earth, and it's like, go ask him questions, go talk to him, go ask him about his life and his decisions, right, and what changed his life and the path he took and the reasons why. I think it's super important, in today's world, even with this podcast, in a weird way, you could get a lot of wisdom from a lot of people and save it. In my generation, we couldn't really save it, but this generation can save a lot with interviews and videos of people's lives. So I think it's super important, but I think you had to have people invest in your kids and want to invest in your kids and to value that. Super, super important.
Yeah. Cause I'm sure there's certain things that you can say, or even that you have said, that go right over your heads. And then one other person says it. Yep. and because it's a different voice for some reason. Oh, Dad, did you hear what they said?
Oh,
I've been saying that your whole life.
That's a good coaching one. I've done that a million times coaching, but yeah, I think it's super important.
Right.
Just invest in other, and then that's encouragement too, is I think as dads, you need to invest in other kids' lives.
Sure.
For sure. Your example, not only to your kids, but to every kid.
Right. Definitely. We're almost there. 2 questions left.
Fire away.
All right. So as a teacher, coach, and parent, you've gotten to see a lot of kids, and some generations coming through your schools. What do you feel like, what kind of qualities, characteristics do you notice in most kids that you see today, coaching and teaching, and those, any specific qualities you feel like are just kind of missing, that is kind of very apparent, but also on the other end of the spectrum of what are some of those qualities that, man, like these are the most important that me and my wife are focusing on with our kids?
That's a big question.
So maybe start with the first. Anything, and you kind of mentioned that, like presence, having a presence there. So maybe starting with that.
Well, I think that's number one is being present. Also, I think the hard thing is technology. It's that phone thing. Being a junior high teacher, and we didn't give our kids a phone until after junior high.
Sure.
And there's a lot of kids that have them in 4th, 5th, 6th grade, and they're looking at their phone at lunch at lunch every day. Kids are looking at their phones or their iPads. not talking to each other, not
Right.
playing, not doing stuff. So
Mm,
the individual, the ability to be an individual is too much. Like you
right.
need to communicate, you need to be with kids, you need
Yeah.
to talk. And so I think that's what I see in this generation. And I just see busy people and not relationships. And I
Yeah.
think it's kind of sad big
Right.
in the big picture. So kids nowadays have a harder time dealing, I think through COVID too, with adults and with
Sure.
each other. And so it's pretty sad. And then teaching wise, it's kind of changed. There's a lot of teaching through the iPad now and through
Right.
technology. So they're not necessarily communicating. They're not doing the biology labs and things like that and interacting with others.
Huh.
They're interacting with devices. So
Right.
I think that's sad. That's an advantage of teaching PE is there's no devices.
Right. Yeah, no, that's true. You were forced to have some conversations there,
Yeah.
which is good.
So that's the one big thing I see is the communication with others and being able to relate to others in relationships. And if you really think about life in the big picture too, one of my things is it's about relationships.
Right.
You
Yeah.
want people to stand by you. And one of my sayings, I got lots of them, is there's nothing like a friend, but there's nothing like an old friend. So old friends are the ones that'll be there no matter
Right.
what.
You putting time in there.
So I think kids need to establish friends and then
Right.
establish old friends. I think that's a good thing. So
Yeah. It makes me think of like, I mean, the heart of scripture is love God and love others, right? And if you're always looking down at a screen, like the only person you're really thinking about is yourself or texting somebody, but that's not a relationship. You know, you have to look up. You got to look up to make communication relationships with others and with God.
Yeah.
So
Good
yeah,
point.
getting those phones away or at least having some balance there. Yeah. And how about like with your kids? What are kind of some of those biggest things that you feel like you guys have been really trying your best to focus on with Grant and Haley as they've grown up?
I think, like you said, relationships are super important. Family, relationship with God. We didn't necessarily force Christianity, a personal relationship with Jesus, church on them. We wanted them to want that in their lives and surrounded them with people and with things and then given them the choice. Yeah. And so that's been a hard thing in a weird way, but also I think a good thing because it's their decision. I send my daughter every day some Bible verses and some of my daily devotionals. And another thing I did as a dad, I think that my dad did, and I'm sure some of your listeners the same way, is every morning I do my little Bible study sitting right where I am right now. And my kids have saw me every morning of their life looking at the Word of God and praying and spending time.
And knowing that's important to you.
And knowing that's important. That's how I start my day. And, you know, one of my hopes in life or prayers would that they would do the same thing.
Right. Yeah.
And so back to your question is we want them to be independent, strong, you know, people. And, but we also want to be there for them to lean on. So it's a really hard question because there's been some disappointments, but also there's been just some huge blessings in that. And I don't think you're always a parent. It's, you know, it doesn't stop for us in a couple of months when Grant goes to college. We're always going to be there.
Yeah, for sure. It makes me think my son, you know, he's almost 2 in August. We have this picture book, and has lots of, you know, sounds and pictures, but it's interesting because he'll see a picture of something and he'll relate it with somebody. So he'll see my guitar or he'll see basketball and he'll say dada ball. Yeah. Dada ball or dada tar. Like, and he knows those are things that I do because he's seen it. Yep. And so like for me, it's convicting of knowing like, man, what am I doing that he's watching as a 1.5-year-old that he's relating that's connected with daddy. And that's important to him. So it's good to evaluate and convicting too of like, man, what are they watching? Because they're little sponges. Yep. Always watching. And they'll see what's important to you and often mimic it.
Yep. They're going to mimic it. That's the main thing. They're going to emulate it. And so that's, you know, there's some pressure on that, but if you're doing the right thing, all good. It's all good.
All right. Last question. We'll end it here. Any advice at all for new dads and young dads out there. We talked a lot about high school and, coming into that, but that you would just give, maybe even thinking that you wish you had when you were a young dad to emulate and to do with your kids.
I think that, first thing in my head is be vulnerable to them. Just tell them about life, and like we said earlier, you're the example. They're always going to look for you. They're a sponge. So growing up through life, you're the example for their life. And if you live a good life, doing the right things, they will too. I think you need to love your wife in front of them.
Amen.
And it's super, super important. And to love others. I think you need to be a giver, not a taker, and be humble in that. So be always giving, because then they'll be giving, and that's important. Relationships are super, super important with your kids, but also with everybody, your neighborhoods and your jobs, things like that.
Yeah.
I think just how Christ has called us to be, and God, and be in the Word and be in church and praise God, and let your kids know that that's number one in your life, in your relationship with your spouse, and then your family. That if you have things in order, good things happen.
Sure, right.
And like you said, the very first question: enjoy every stage.
Right.
It changes in it, and we're getting to the end of a stage, and I've loved every single moment of it. And that's one of the things that Michelle and I tried to do, is we want to enjoy every stage, not yearn for the next one, but just enjoy each one, because it changes and it's good. And then we'll have a new stage of life too.
Right.
And we want to enjoy our new stage of life.
Yeah. We've mentioned on the podcast before, the challenge of fatherhood is enjoying every season and being content with that season. Just like you said, there's highs and lows, and once it goes, it's not coming back that season. So,
and I think being a father, one of the best joys I have is to see your kids turn out really, really well. It's a blessing. And to hear, like I said, other people praise how your kids, their character, their morals, kind of who they are, that just means a ton to me. And to my wife, to just know that, oh my gosh, we laid a really good foundation, and they're doing really good things in the world and having good relationships. It's been huge for me.
Would you mind praying us out? Just for all the dads and moms, any parents that are listening in to the episode.
Yeah, happy to. Father, thanks for this time. Thanks for Micah, and pray for his family and his parenting and being a father, and for everybody else out there. I pray for wisdom and for guidance and leadership, and how you parent your kids, and how you love your wife or your spouse. And I'm just thankful for this time. Thank you for the stages of life. I pray that each one would be a blessing in your stage of life and my stage of life. And this, thanks for being together. Good to spend time with Mike again. In your name, amen.
Amen.
And that was episode 11, Just a Little Slice of Heaven. Thank you to all our listeners out there. Hope you are enjoying these interviews as much as I am. If you like this episode, please share it with a dad you know that you feel could use some encouragement. We are now on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you follow us on Spotify, hit that notification bell so you don't miss an episode. And if you follow us on Apple Podcasting and you like the episode, leave a 5-star review and follow our show as we continue this journey of fatherhood. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you guys in a couple weeks for the last episode of season 1 of Rad Dads for the Father's Day special.